Hey, what's up everyone, and welcome back to another video. In today's tutorial video, we're going to go over how you can utilize the power of creating smart contracts and building on different platforms like web and mobile, but still utilizing the same smart contract on both of those applications. And an overview of what we're going to be doing in this tutorial, we're first going to build a simple smart contract like an address book, which will allow us to add and store contacts as well as remove contacts from our address book. We'll then build a front-end web application that will interact with this smart contract, allowing us to again add and remove contacts. We'll also build a mobile application interacting with this same smart contract that allows us to do the same functions. This way, whenever we add a contact from one application or the other, it will appear in the other application as well. And this is to really showcase how you can use smart contracts within multiple applications, because they do exist on the blockchain and they are decentralized and permissionless, meaning anyone can actually use them as well. In fact, you can also use this smart contract and create this front-end web application. Now, there are certain restrictions and requirements that we're going to add to our smart contract, which won't allow anyone to interact with it, but you'll still be able to view and pull the information from the smart contract and display it in your application if you choose to do so. So with all of that being said, let's first jump on the computer here and let's create our custom smart contract. So on my computer here, I have my command line open and we're going to create our contract using thirdweb. So I'm going to run npx thirdweb at latest create contract, and this is our CLI command to create smart contracts using thirdweb. We're first going to be prompted to name our project. We'll name this contact book. And then we can select a framework. We can either choose Hardhat or Forge. We're going to use Forge for this tutorial. Then we will also give a name for our smart contract. So I will name this contact book as well. And now we can choose what type of contract we want to start from. Now we are just creating our very own custom smart contract here. So we're going to start with an empty contract. And once this is done, we'll just change directory into our contact book here, and then open this up in our code editor. So in our code editor here, we have our source folder, and in our source folder will be our Solidity file. So we'll open this up. I'll rename this again to contact book for our contract name. And we're going to create our smart contract here. Now, the first thing we're going to do here is set an address. We're going to make this private and we're going to call this the owner. And what we're going to be doing here is in our constructor, we're going to set the owner of this contract to whoever is deploying the contract, and only the owner will be able to add and remove contacts from our contact book. Now, we're going to create a struct here for our contact. It'll be a simple struct here. We'll just create a struct called contact. And it's going to contain a string for the name. So we're just going to have a name for our contact. And then we're going to have an address, which will be the wallet. So when we create a contact, we're only going to supply the name for the contact and their wallet address. And then from there, we're going to have an array of contacts here. We're going to make this a private variable and we'll call it contacts, and this array will just be an array of all the contacts that we have within this contract, and we'll be able to get those contacts and display it in our application. Next thing in our constructor, this is going to be called once the contract is deployed. What we'll do here is set the owner to the deployer of the contract. So whoever deploys the contract will then be the owner, and that is what we'll store in that owner variable that we created up top. We'll then create a modifier here, and this modifier is going to be called only owner, and it's going to require that the sender of the transaction, or the sender of whoever's calling the function to execute, is the owner. So we have to make sure that the wallet calling the function is actually the wallet that deployed the contract. And if they're not, we'll just display here that only the owner can call this function. And now that we have all of those created, we can create some of the functions for our contract. So first function is going to be called add contact. And add contact is going to take the name and the wallet address of the contact that we're adding. It'll be a public function, but only the owner can call this function here. And what this will do is we're going to add to our contacts array, so the array that we created right up here. And what we're adding is our contact, so our contact struct here, which is going to then take our name and the wallet address. Then we'll create a function to remove our contact. And this is going to take a uint, and we're going to give it the index that we want to remove. And this is again going to be a public function, but only the owner can call this function. We are going to require here that the index that we pass through is less than the length of our actual contacts array here, because we don't want to try and remove a contact that doesn't exist. Next, we're going to loop through our array of contacts. So we'll do a uint here. And what this is going to do is shift any of the contacts that come after the contact that we're removing and shifting their index to the proper order. Because if we remove an address within the middle of our address book or the middle of our array of addresses, we want to make sure that all the addresses after that are shifted to the proper index. And then after that, we will again just pop off that contact. And then our final function here is going to be get contacts. And this is going to be a public and a view that returns our array of contacts. So again, it's just going to return our contacts array with all of our contacts in it. And again, this here is going to be a public function. With this contract, you can actually anyone can take the contract address and call this function here and get all the contacts within this contract. Only the owner of the contract, though, will be able to add and remove contacts from the contract. And that does it for our very simple contact contract here. Again, just to quickly go over it, we're creating a variable to set the owner of our contract. We're then creating a struct for our contact, which will just take a name and a wallet address. We then have an array of contacts here that we're going to store all of our contacts that we add. In our constructor, we are setting the owner of the contract to whoever deploys the contract. We have a modifier called onlyOwner, where only the owner can call certain functions that uses this modifier. And those two functions are going to be add contact, which will just add the contact that we give it to our contacts array. And then we have our remove contacts function that one will require that the index is less than the amount of the length of the array. So make sure that we are calling and removing an index that exists. Then we'll loop through all of the contacts that come after the index that we are removing and shifting them into the proper index and popping off the one that we want. And then finally, we have our function to get all the contacts, which will return our array of contacts to us that we can use to display in our application. So once we have the contract for our contact book set, we can now deploy this. I'm going to open up my terminal here, and I'm going to run npx thirdweb at latest and deploy. And this is going to allow us to deploy our smart contract that we just created using thirdweb. And the great thing about using thirdweb when deploying contracts is we don't have to provide our private keys or anything within our code. We'll actually be able to deploy this. Thirdweb will upload all of the metadata for the contract to IPFS for us, and we'll be able to deploy this contract through thirdweb's dashboard and use our wallet through our browser to actually deploy the contract. So when I run this here, you can see here that it is detecting our project. It compiles it for us. It uploads our contract metadata, and then it gives us a link to deploy our contract. Now, this should automatically open up in your browser. And if it doesn't, you just click on this link that is provided here. And you should be brought up with a page similar to this that allows us to select the network or chain that we want to deploy our contract to. And we just one-click deploy our contract right over here. So I'm choosing Optimism Gurley testnet for this, and I'm going to select deploy now. A transaction will appear to deploy our contract. We'll confirm it. Then a second transaction that we need to sign to add this to our dashboard for thirdweb will appear and we'll sign that to add that. And you can see here, once it is successfully deployed, you'll be brought to your contract dashboard. We have our contact book up here. We have our contract address. And if we look here, we can even go to our Explorer and we can see the functions that we created, our add and remove contacts, and our read, which is our get contracts that is returning us an empty array right now because we don't have anything or any contacts stored. And now that we have our contract deployed, let's first build our web application, and then we'll build our mobile application after that. So back in my command line here, I'm going to run npx thirdweb at latest create app. And this is going to allow us to create our application using thirdweb. So first thing we need to do is, what is our project name? We'll call this contact book web. We're using EVM blockchain here, and we're going to use Next.js and TypeScript for this tutorial. And once that finishes, we will change into our contact book web and open this up in our code editor. And in our code editor, the first thing we're going to do is set up our application to work on the same network and chain that we deployed our contract to. So under the pages folder, we're going to head over to the underscore app.tsx file. And here you'll see a variable called active chain. And this is where we're going to set the chain that we deployed our smart contract to. Now in my case, I used the Optimism, Gurley testnet. So I'm going to set it to Optimism Gurley here. And we can take a look at our application. I'm going to open up my terminal here and run yarn dev. And we can see here that we have been brought to our project. There is some thirdweb boilerplate code here with some links to our portal, dashboard, and templates if you are just starting off and building an application with thirdweb. So we know that everything is working here. If we actually connect our wallet here, we can see that we are connected to our Optimism Gurley testnet right there. So coming back to our code editor, let me just close our terminal out here. I have some styling code that we're going to be using here. So I'm going to open up my style sheets here, head on over to my home module.css, and I'm going to paste this styling code right into here and save it. You can check out the links down in the description. We'll have a link to the repo of this project, and you can also copy the style sheets and follow along if you want to. The next thing we'll do is let's create a new folder in our directory here, and we'll just name this const for constants, and we're going to create a new file in there called addresses.ts. And what this file will do is just store our contract address for our contact book contract. That way we can use it throughout our application. So I'm just going to create a variable here called contract address, and I'm going to come back to my dashboard here and copy that contract address, come back into my code editor and paste it right there. Then we'll come back into our files here, and I'm going to head over to the index.tsx file. And again, this is the file with all the boilerplate code. I'm going to remove all of it actually. So we'll just delete all of this here, and we'll create a new div here. And this new div, we're going to give it a class name of styles.container. We'll create another div within that. We'll give this a class name of styles.address container. Then within this one, we'll add one more div. This has the class name of styles.address header. And within that, we will add our contact book title. And we will also add a connect wallet button, which is a UI component from thirdweb. And this is going to add all of our connect wallet functionality to our application. So we'll save that. We'll take a look back at our app here, and you can see we have contact book and then we have a wallet connected. So if we just connect it, we can again connect our wallet. Let's go back into our styling and actually center this right over here. So back in my styles here, I'm going to come up to container, and we're going to actually get rid of this. We're going to display flex here, and we're just going to column and make sure everything is centered. And coming back to our app, yep, everything is centered within our app. So the next thing we'll do is we will display our contacts down here, but we don't have any contacts right now. So we're actually going to create a little button here that allows us to create and add contacts to our contact book. In my file directory here, I'm going to create a new folder called components. And in my components folder, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call this add contact.tsx. And in here, we are going to create our component to add contacts to our contact smart contract. So what we want to do is let's pull up a demo of our application really quick. So this is a demo of the contact app that we want to make. So we want to make a button that allows us to add a contact, and then we can add in our contact's name and wallet address, and then we have a button to add that contact to our contact book. So we're going to create first a state variable to take care of this little modal that pops up. So let's create that by heading back to our app here. We're first going to come up here, and we're going to create a state variable for add contact. And we'll use the use state hook from React here. And by default, we'll set it to false. We're also going to create some state variables for our name and for our address. And that's going to take care of the two input fields for adding our name and address when adding a contact. Then we'll create a function called reset form, and what this is going to do is just set name and address back to blank. That way, once we add our contact, if we want to add another one, it's a new clear form for us to add it in. So in our component here, we're going to check to see if add contact is true or false, and depending on the state of our add contact, if it is false here, we're going to add a button, and that button is going to say add contact. And what this button is going to do is we'll give it first a class name here. We'll actually make sure we import our styles. So we'll give it a class name of styles dot add contact trigger button. And on click, we're just setting the state of add contact to true. And then in the true section here, so if add contact is true, we're going to create a div, give this a class name here of styles.add contact container. Create another div in there. This one has a class name of styles.add contact card. And in this card, we are going to add a close button, which is going to do the opposite of our add contact button. So we're going to create a button here that says close. We're going to give this a class name of, I think it's close button. And then this is going to, on click, we'll set our add contact back to false. So if we save that, we can take a quick look at our application here. Well, actually, let's add that into our index.tsx here. And we only want to display our contacts if we have a wallet connected. So in order to check that here, we can create a variable called address here. And we can use the use address hook from thirdweb. And what this does is it gets the wallet address of the connected wallet to our application. But if there is no wallet connected to our application, it returns undefined. So we can also use it as a way to check if there is a wallet connected to our application or not. So we'll say address here. And if there is an address, what we'll do is create a div here with the class name styles dot address list container. Create another div in that. The class name of styles dot address list header. And in here, we will have our title of contacts. And then we will add our add contact component. So taking a look at our, what did we do here? Oh, this is going to be outside of our address header one. There we go. So taking a look at our application here, we have our contact book, and then we have contacts, and then we have add contacts, which would then create our form to add our contact here. Right now, it is just a modal with a close button, but we can see we can open and close the ability to add contacts. If we disconnect our wallet, it's not going to show any of that information because we don't have a wallet connected. So coming back to our application here, we'll go back to our add contacts.tsx file, and we're going to create that form to add a contact to our application. So beneath this button right here, we're going to create a new div, and this is going to be for our form. So we'll give this a class name. We'll give it styles.add contact form. And in here, we're going to first give it a title of add contact. We'll then create the first input, which will be a text input here. It'll have a placeholder of name. The value will be set to name, and on change, we're just going to change the set name to whatever the input contains. For our next one, it'll be a text as well. This one, the placeholder, we're going to make it just a address placeholder here. The value will be address, and on change, again, we're setting the address to the value that is in our input. And if we save that, we'll take a quick look at our application again. So when we hit add contact, we now have this form here that says add contact. We can put a name, wallet address, but we need a button here that will actually execute the add contact function from our smart contract and add this to our list of contacts. So coming back to our code editor here, right below the add contact form and div that we created, we're going to create a new component, and we're going to use a thirdweb component here called the web3 button. And what this will allow us to do is create a button that is going to interact with our smart contract. So we're going to name this button and say that it says add contact. Now the web3 button, we do require it to have a minimum of two things. The first thing is the contract address. So this is the contract address that this button is going to be interacting with. And in this case, we have our contract address saved in our contract address variable. And then the next one is the action. So what is this button going to be doing on our contract? So on our contract, we can call any function that we want. So we can do contract call here. And we just need to name the function that we want to call and then pass any of the arguments that is required for that function. So if we come back to our contact book contract here and we head to Explorer and we go to the write section, so these are our write functions, we have our add contact function. So the name of our function is add contact, and it takes these two arguments here, right? The name that we want the contact to be and the associated wallet address. So I'm going to copy the name of the function here, and we're going to say that this is the function that we want to call. Now we need to pass an array of the arguments for this. So the first one, again, is the name. So we can pass the name variable that we're getting from our name input. And then we can also give it the address. So whatever wallet address is posted in this input here. And then that way, when we click this button, it's going to execute our write function on our contract. Now we can also add something called an on success here. And what this will do is run a function here that once this transaction complete is successful, we can run our reset form, which will reset the inputs for our form here. And then we can set the contact to false again, closing the modal out and going back into our application. So let's see, let's save that here. We'll head back to our app. And if we hit add contact, you can see we have our add contact button here. We just need to add the name and the wallet address. So let me actually come back here. We'll hit our wallet and we'll copy the address right here for our wallet. So let me just add my name here, paste my wallet address that I want associated with my contact, and then we'll hit add contact. And this should pull up a transaction within our wallet because we are executing a write function on our contract here. So we'll confirm that transaction. And you can see here that the transaction is going through. And what we should have seen happen is once this completes, our modal disappears. If we come back in, you can see the form is blank again and our transaction went through. But we can see here that we still haven't displayed our contacts within our application. So next, what we're going to do is grab the information of contacts from the smart contract and display it in our application here, and also add the ability to remove that as well. So in our file directory here, we're going to add a new file in our components folder. And this file is going to be called our contact list.tsx. And our contact list here. So for our contact list, we want to get the list of the contacts within our contract. So if we actually head back to our contract dashboard here and we go to the read functions now and we hit get contacts, you can see here that this is the array that we would get returned, which has the contact that we just added. And it will have a list of all the contacts that we do add into our contract. So this is what we want to be able to get and display within our application. So I'm going to copy this get contacts function here to make sure that we put it right in our application. The first thing we want to do is, in order to interact with our contract, we need to get our contract here. So we're going to create a variable to hold our contract in, and we're going to use the use contract hook from thirdweb, and we're going to pass it our contract address here. So let's import the use contract hook. Let's also import our contract variable. And this is going to get an instance of our contract here, and this is going to allow us to start interacting with it. So what we can do next is create a new variable. We're going to call this data and our contacts here. And we'll use another React hook here from thirdweb called use contract read. And what this is going to allow us to do is read a function from our contract. So again, what we have to pass here is give it the contract that we're reading the function of, and then the function name. So let's put this here. So we're reading, you're using the contract, which we just stated up here. And the name of the function that we're reading is get contacts. And what we can do here is console log our contacts, and we can take a look at this in our application. So let's add this contact list to our index here. So right under here, we will add contacts, and then under this header section, we will then add our contact list. Come here, nothing's going to show up different because we haven't added anything to our component, but we can see here we have an array, and you can see our first item in our array is our name and wallet address that we added in. So let's display that now in our application. Coming back to our contact list, we're going to add is loading here to our contacts just to see if our contacts have actually finished loading before we try to display them. So down here, we'll make sure that is loading contracts is no longer loading. And if it is still loading, we will just show some loading text here. Once it has finished loading, we're going to check to make sure that the length of our contacts is longer than 0, because if we don't have contacts, we won't have anything to display here. So we'll check that it is greater than 0. And if it is not greater than 0 and it is 0, we're just going to display that no contacts are found. And if it is greater than 0, then we will map through our contacts and display each contact. So we're going to map through our contacts. For each one, we're going to get a contact back, and we're going to display that contact. But we're going to create a card for our contacts to display in. So in our files here, in components, I'm going to add a new file, call this contact card.tsx. And in our contact card, we're first going to create a type and props here. And we're going to require things like, one, our index, because we need the index number in order to remove a contact from the list. We need the name, and then we need the, we'll say wallet, which will be a string as well. We'll then create this here, our component. And for our contact card, we'll create a div here. We'll make sure that we import our styles here real quick. It's actually going to be from home. So our div here will have a class name of styles dot contact card container. In that, we'll have another div. This one will have the class name of styles dot contact card info. And this is where we will display the name. We'll have something that says wallet address, and then below that display the wallet address of our contact. So coming back to our contact list, again in our map here, we are going to display a contact card for each one of those contacts that we have in our array. And again, we need we'll need a key, which will be our index, which will be the index of the contact, the name, which is going to be contact.name, and then the wallet, which is going to be contact.wallet. So coming back to our application here, we can see this is our contact that we added. That was the name we put in, and this is the wallet address that we associated to it. Next, let's add a little delete button here in case we want to remove it off of our list. We need a button that will remove that contact for us. So coming back to our contact card, what we're going to do is below this div here, we're going to add a Web3 button again. This Web3 button, we'll just make it an X because it's going to delete our contact. Again, we need to specify the contract address this is going to be interacting with, which is our contract address. We'll import that there. And then we have the action, and again, we're going to call a specific function from our contract, and that is going to be a remove contact function. And the argument that takes is the index of the contact that we are removing. So we'll just give it the index of whichever contact is that it is clicked on or pressed. And at the very top here, we'll also add a class name for this and give it some styling as well. We'll call this the remove contact button. That's in all caps, on remove contact button. So coming back to our application here, you can see we now have an X here, which will allow us to delete our contact. So if we click on this, it should execute that remove contact function for us. We get a transaction that pops up because, again, we are writing something to our smart contract. And once the transaction goes through, you can see we now get displayed our no contacts found because we don't have any contacts within our contact book. So let's go and let's add that contact back in. Let me get the contract address here. Paste that in. We'll add that contact, and we'll add one more and confirm that. And that will do it really for our web application. So let's add one more. We'll just call this one thirdweb, and let me get a wallet address for this. So we'll paste in that wallet address. We'll add that contact, confirm the transaction. And there you go. We can see we now have 2 contacts within our contact book. So that does it for our web application. We're able to connect a wallet. We're able to add contacts, remove contacts, and view those contacts within our contact contract. Now, again, like we said back in the beginning of this video, with smart contracts, we can actually use this through other applications, even like a mobile app. And with thirdweb, you can actually build Web3 and blockchain mobile apps using our React Native SDK. So the next thing we're going to do is build out a mobile app that will be a similar application to this one here. And we'll be able to add more contacts and view the same contact information. And this smart contract will be able to interact with both our web and mobile application as well. So I'm going to come back to my command line here, and we're going to create a new application, this time for a mobile application, and we're going to use our React Native SDK. So I'm going to run npx thirdweb at latest create app. We're going to name this one contact book mobile. Again, EVM. This time we're going to use React Native, and we're going to create an Expo project for this. Once that's done, we'll change into our contact book mobile here, and we'll open this up in our code editor. And in our code editor here, you can find the app.tsx file. This is our main file here for our mobile application. We can actually open up our terminal here and run yarn iOS. And what this will do is run the boilerplate code for our React Native thirdweb app on a emulator. Because I'm on a Mac, it's going to run this on an iPhone emulator on the Mac, and we can take a quick look at our application. And you can see here we have an emulator of our application running here. It says React Native thirdweb starter. We have a connect wallet button. And you can see we have our choose your wallet to connect to the application. Now, by default, we do have MetaMask Rainbow, and continue as guest button down here is what we call our local wallet, which creates a local wallet on the device that is being connected to. But because we were running this on an emulator, we actually can't use MetaMask or Rainbow. We can use our local wallet because we are on our computer here and the wallet will be stored there. So if we actually hit continue guest with our local wallet, it'll continue and connect to that local wallet there. But we won't be able to do MetaMask or Rainbow because on the emulator, we don't have any of these wallets installed, and we can't install them on an emulator phone. So if you are using iOS like I am, we can run this on our actual iOS device. And all we need to do to run it on our own iOS device is first find our file, and then you're going to open the React Native Expo starter, the Xcode workspace here. And once you have it opened up in Xcode, you're going to click on the React Native Expo starter. Head on over to the signing and capabilities here, and we'll just make sure that we are set to our team here. We have automatic managed signing on. And once that's done, you're going to plug in your iOS device to your computer. So I have my phone here plugged in to my computer. At the top bar here, you'll see you can select the device that you want to run your application on. You can just click on that, select your device, and then hit the play button to build the application. And what this is going to do is build the application and run it directly on our iOS device. And right here, I opened up a screen recording of my phone here. So let me actually disconnect the wallet here. But you can see it's the same template that we had for our application that we opened up on our emulator. But because now it is on my device, if I hit connect wallet and I select something like MetaMask, it'll actually open up my MetaMask app here. We'll sign in and we'll get the prompt up here to connect to our application. So we can hit connect. It'll bring us back to our app, and you can see here that we are now connected with our MetaMask wallet. So we can use this now to test out and actually run those functions to add new contacts to our contact list. So back in our code editor here, let me close out that terminal. We're going to create a new folder in our directory here again, called const, and we're going to add a new file again called addresses and store our address for our contract. So we can actually come back to our web app one here, copy that, and paste that into our mobile one. And then we're going to create a new folder called components. And the first component that we're going to add is a new file, and we're going to call this the add contact.tsx component again. And in here, we're going to create a component very similar to the add contact component that we created for our web version. So we're going to create our component here. We're going to use a view from React Native. And in here, again, we're going to set those state variables for toggling our add contact modal and for setting the name and wallet address in our form. So we're going to create the first one here for add contact. We'll set it to false by default. We'll import use state. We'll then create one for our name. Set it to a blank string. We'll do the same thing for address, setting it to a blank string as well. We'll then also create that same reset function here, which will just reset our set name and address back to empty strings again. So within our component here, we're going to check the state if we're adding a contact or not. So we'll do it not add contact. So what we'll do is if the state is set to false, we will add a button here. And this button is going to have a title that is just going to be a plus button. And on press, it is going to set the add contact to true. So we'll import the button from React Native. And once this is set to true, we'll create another view right down here. And in this view, we'll have a button again. This button will have the title of not cancel, we'll just say close. And this on press will do the opposite and set the, we don't need a reset, but set the add contact to false. Then we'll create that little form again where it says, we'll add some text. Make sure we import text from React Native here. So the text will say add contact. Below that, we will have a text input, which will have a placeholder of name, and value will be the name state variable, and on change, we are setting the value of the input to the name variable. We're going to do the same thing for address here. So same thing for the address, just with the address state variable. And with that form, so if we save this, let's add that to our app component here. So back in our app.tsx file, we will, under the app intersection, we have connect wallet here. We're actually going to change this. We'll name this to our contact book. We'll save that. You can see it changes right here on our phone app. And below here, we're going to add our add contact component here. So you can see we have our plus button. So if I come back on my phone here and I hit that plus button, you can see we are given a little input field where we can add the name and address. We can close that out really quick right there. We're going to change this view here to not display content into center. We'll display it at top, and then we're just going to add margin top of 50. Yeah, there we go. Now it'll be at the top of our list here. And yeah, we can now add a name and address, but we still need that button to add that to our contact list. So let's come back to our add contact here. And below the text input, we're going to add that Web3 button from a thirdweb. And this button is going to say add contact. And again, just like how our Web3 button works on our web app, it works the same way with our React Native here. So we just need to give it our contract address and then the action that we want it to perform. And again, this here is going to call a function on our contract. So we'll do contract.call here. The function that we're going to call is add contact, and we need to give it the array of arguments here. So we have our name, and then we have our address. So again, we are calling the add contact function from our contract, giving it the name and address of whatever is in our text input to add as a new contact. And then we can do on success again. And on success, we are going to reset and set the add contact state back to false. So if we save that here, so coming back to my mobile app here, so we'll just actually copy this address that we have of our wallet. We'll hit the plus button, we'll add a new name, we'll just say tester, and we will paste in that wallet address there. So now when we hit add contact, it'll open up our MetaMask, and it'll actually bring up a transaction for us that we have to confirm, just like we would on our web app. Once we confirm that transaction, it's going to bring us back into our app here, and you can see the transaction is going through. So now if we actually come back to our web app here, you can now see that we have our tester, which is our contact that we just added, and our wallet address. Now that isn't going to appear in our mobile app just yet because we haven't added our contact list to our mobile app. So let's do that right now. Let's create a new component. Here, we're going to call this new file contact list.tsx. And in our contact list here, we're going to create our component for our contact list. And again, we'll be returning a view right here. We'll make sure we import that from React Native. Now, just like how we got the array of contacts for our web application, we're going to do the same thing here. So we're going to create our variable for our contract, and we're going to use the use contract hook again from thirdweb and give it our contract address. And then we will get the array of contacts here, and we will use our use contract read hook. And what we're going to do is read a function on our contract that we specified up top, and we are going to get the get contracts function from our contract. So then coming back down here in the view, we're going to display our text here that says our contacts. And just like we did in our web app, we're going to check that is loading contacts is finished loading. If it's loading, we will show some text that says loading. And once it has loaded, we're going to check that the contacts.length is greater than 0, possibly undefined here. And if it is greater than 0, then we will display the contacts. And if it is not greater than 0, we'll display text that says no contacts. And again, we are going to now map through our contacts here. And we're also going to get our index. It's going to be a number. And for each contact that we map through, we're going to create our contact card. So we're going to come back in our components here, create a new file called contact card.tsx. And in our contact card, we're going to first again create our type props here. And we need our name and we need the wallet. And for our card here, we will return a view. And in that view, we'll give our text. of the name and the wallet address. So coming back to our contact list now, for each one of those contacts that we have, we're going to give it a contact card, and we'll set the index, and we'll set the key to the index. We'll give it the name and wallet address to display. And then coming back to our app.tsx, under our add contact, we will add now our contact list. So you can see here, we now have our 3 contacts that we have that matches the contacts on our web application. So we can test something out here. Let's just get rid of this first one here. So we'll get rid of it on our web application here. We'll confirm that transaction. You can see it gets rid and removes the contact from our web application here. And if we come back to our mobile app, you can see our contacts in our mobile app have also updated, and we no longer have that first contact. And there you have it. We built a single smart contract, a simple address book that keeps contacts that we can add and remove. And we built a web application and a mobile application based off of that single smart contract. And this was a quick demonstration on how smart contracts can be used for web applications, mobile applications, and even games using our Unity SDK, and how you can interact with these smart contracts from different platforms. And the amazing thing about smart contracts as well is this smart contract, you can actually use this in your web application or your mobile app. You'll be able to view and pull down the contact information, but because the way we have set up our smart contract, where only the owner of the smart contract can add or remove contacts, you won't be able to do that functionality, but you'll be able to view all of the data of the smart contract because that function is public. With blockchain technology and smart contracts, we now have this open protocol where we now have the possibility to use someone's smart contracts if they have public functions and public data that we can read from it. So if you wanted to take these list of contacts and display it in your own application, you could actually take my smart contract here and use that information in your own app. Again, you won't be able to add or remove contacts, but you'll be able to view and display that data. So again, I hope you folks enjoyed this video. If you did and you found some value in it, give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to turn on your notification bell so you don't miss out on videos just like this. And if you haven't joined our Discord yet and joined the community of builders just like yourself, we'll add a link down in the description. Be sure to join our Discord. If you have any questions or you need any support, we have our amazing support team there to help you out. But again, I hope you folks enjoyed this video, and until next time, see ya.